I'm from the Archaeology department within the Faculty of Humanities. I'm also quite heavily involved with electronics and computer science via various routes.
And yes, I'm Cheryl Metcalf. I'm with the Faculty of Health Sciences, and I'm heavily involved in enterprise and translation of innovation into healthcare. And my background is in computing, originally as an undergraduate, and through various versions of computing applied to robotics, and then landed in health somehow, but now are doing very applied work in health.
So, Cheryl, we're ostensibly from very different kind of sides of the university. Well, I think both of us kind of the joy of the university is the creating of those kind of connections between different people. So I'm in archaeology, but most of my research is focused on the ways in which we can use digital technologies to record, to analyse and to present the past. So that's my introduction to you.
Yeah, and so I use technologies, I develop technologies that are applied to healthcare to improve people's lives or to help them in their rehabilitation. So in one way we use, for example, gaming technologies to encourage people to rehabilitate at home. So when people have an impairment like a stroke, they're sent home with a set of exercises, some of which can be quite boring to do because they're very repetitive. But the repetition is the key thing with that, so they get better if they repeat. So the exercise being boring is quite a bad thing for a patient. So by including a gaming environment and so taking the motivating aspects of gaming, we can kind of encourage patients to engage in their own rehabilitation, get that repetition, and then hopefully see their recovery in a better way, in a more meaningful way.
So is that just using like standard gaming tools that you've been around?
So image-based gaming. So I'm involved in a company at Southampton Science Park, which we're developing image-based gaming akin to the Microsoft Kinect kind of idea, and to use that and apply it very much at home-based rehabilitation level.
All right. So because in archaeology or things like museology, quite a lot of gaming technology is starting to be used either to give people an opportunity to interact with objects that they can't otherwise touch, or to give them access to things that are kind of very, very remote from them. So people have talked about taking material that is sensitive for some reason, whether it's like fragile or worth an awful lot of money, or it's on the other side of the planet, and thinking about how can you take that object and deliver it digitally into the, well, not really into the hands, so that you can look at an object that is sort of, say, otherwise wouldn't be accessible. So you could have a recording of this beautiful cup, and then we could transmit that recording to the other side of the world, perhaps where the cup had particular significance, or we could combine it with another version of that cup which is held in another museum on the other side of the world, bring the two together virtually, and let a researcher or let a museum visitor interact with them in some way. And that's sort of increasingly common. So trying to engage people who perhaps are more used to using these kind of visual technologies with the past.
Okay. So we have developed a technology for rehabilitation called the Haptics technology, which seems to be quite synergistic to what you're talking about. So it's a technology that you wear. You wear it on your fingertips, and it provides a sensation. So we use it in stroke rehabilitation for people who've had a stroke and they've lost the sensory perception, and as a rehabilitation aid. But we're also using it in a gaming context as well. So when people interact in a gaming environment, to make that environment more immersive and real. So it strikes me that the kind of displays and things that you can't touch for whatever reason could be made more real by putting on a haptics device and sort of interacting with that device and interacting with whether it be the virtual object or looking at the object itself. You could get some sort of sensory feedback on the fingertips around the surface texture, the temperature, whether it moves or has moving parts and things like that. So you could get that very real interaction back to the hand from that.
Well, so I could pick up this cup. This cup was on, I don't know, in a university on the other side of the planet.
Yeah.
I could not only look at the cup, I could also pick it up, or I could feel the fact that it had nice hot coffee in it.
So if you visualize a screen or a VR environment, if you take the most high-tech solution, and you have a virtual version of that cup, whether it be as a television screen or whether it be as a sort of immersive thing. So the visual element of the cup exists. You then, by wearing the haptics device, you can then reach out and close your fingertips around where you think the cup is, and you will get a sensation of a hot cup of tea. So you'll get heat and you'll get pressure and you'll get a solid kind of feeling of something in your hand.
That is like the Holy Grail.
It's tricking the brain. That's
it is. Well, because I, as an archaeologist, obviously I'm sort of obsessed with kind of material objects and using stuff like this cup as a way of trying to understand how people behave and interact, and have done in the past. But the problem with all of the magic tools that we use to record this is that you only have one kind of sensory interaction. You only have looking at it.
Yeah.
And yet, I think as archaeologists, and I'm sure as every other discipline, we think with our hands and with our bodies as much as looking at stuff.
It's our tangible interaction to the world. So I can see something. Quite often I see things that I don't believe, and I would like to.
Christmas jumpers. It's been added in green screening.
Absolutely. But in order to kind of put context around it and make sure that actually where it is in space and what I'm seeing is real, I need to reach out and I need to be able to touch it, and that's what makes it physical to me. That's what makes that environment become an environment to me, and it's not just being dizzy and not knowing where the walls are, that kind of feeling, but you put your hand out and you know the wall's there and you can close your eyes and you can just center yourself. It's the same sort of thing. If you reach out and touch something, it's there. And that's the missing link at the minute in so many domains, not just health where it came from, but gaming and like
design,
absolutely. Yeah. Visualizing an architecture before it's built, that kind of thing, walking around it, touching it, seeing what the paintings on the wall would look like and that kind of thing.
But why, you said that you do it with the stroke rehabilitation, people need to do it like the same thing over and over again, touch the same thing over and over again, presumably. So why is that necessary? Why is it repeating that's important?
So we know that when somebody repeats a movement, it helps encourage what we call neuroplasticity in the brain. So the connections in the brain are better, for want of a better word. So by repeating the movement, it encourages that neuroplasticity. So when you have a stroke, you lose some of that ability for the brain to communicate with itself. So by repeating movement, you kind of re-educate the brain. And you by coupling it with movement as well, you're kind of getting that closed loop of what we call sensory motor integration, which is the sensory part, the touching and the feeling, and the motor, the movement part. So it's about just recovering that process that the brain's lost. So by repeating it, it kind of hardwires it, is the kind of lay term for it. So the bit that kind of stumbles is where the activities are innately not very interesting. So things like moving a block from one side of a table 50 times, and you've got to do that so many times in a week and that kind of thing. It's not something that you get up and think, oh, yeah, I can't wait to do my exercises today. It's kind of, you kind of think, okay, so.
But if it's in Minecraft and the block I pick up feels like it's made of metal or it's made of wood, it's you're more likely to do it.
Or it's just a different kind of game, like if you before your stroke you had an interest in gardening, for example, and the game was a watering can, watering a flower or something like that, and it just makes it a bit more tailored to the individual. So you can change the parameters. That's the wonderful thing about virtual environments. You can change any parameter to suit the individual. So with a game, you can make a small change in the game. So if a patient can move slightly, what they see is that they can do this, and it's encouraging, it's motivating, and they can get instant feedback. So I watered 3 plants and five flowers came up and they get a score.
Yep.
So that's a useful feedback for them. And my score this week was better than my score last week or last month or something like that, so they can see progress.
So that's gamification.
Gamification of rehabilitation, yeah.
So that's just really interesting. So I was thinking when you said the gardening, so I'm getting quite interested in the therapeutic possibilities actually of cultural heritage.
Mm-hmm.
So in things like dementia research, there's some research around gardens. So you take people suffering from various kinds of dementia into a garden,
mm-hmm.
and that sensory kind of overload and the sensory dissonance from their kind of normal environment is seen to have a positive impact on sort of as I understand it, on the kind of the current memories. So you're stimulating a past memory of experience in your garden,
mm-hmm.
And then that helps you to think about recent things, remembering to, lock the door when you leave the house or
Right,
whatever, or
okay.
whatever stage you're at. But sorry, I'm coming to something hopefully relevant in that handling collections that are provided by museums are increasingly used in that same therapeutic context. So rather than somebody with dementia going to a garden, somebody with dementia might come into contact with a box that will have a load of archaeological objects in it. And some of those objects are designed to stimulate their own memories. So for a particular age group, it might be, it might be like a ration book,
mm-hmm.
or whatever.
Yeah.
But you also want to do objects that completely are alien to them to stimulate a different kind of thinking. So you might give them a hand axe or something that's whatever, tens of thousands of years old. But the problem is that the museum or curator or the archaeologist has to come along with a box with some stuff, and it's got a finite amount of stuff in.
Mm-hmm.
So presumably we could take a digital version of something and kind of virtually take
mm-hmm.
that, and that means you could take any object to stimulate whoever it was you were talking to.
So presumably there's only one version of this box. That's the problem, right? So there's only one version of this box and it can go to one person at a time, whereas the beauty of that kind of virtual aspect is that you could then take that to hundreds of dementia patients.
Okay.
And so the box can be replicated and the interaction between the person and the box can be made real.